Hi, in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about internet marketing truths, and separating truth from fiction in internet marketing isn't always easy. Sales letters are designed to be plausible, and copywriters are taught to use exceptionally precise figures in headlines. That's why you'll often see claims along the lines of how I made $2,716.81 in 24 hours. Precision may be true, maybe not, but we tend to believe it because it's so precise, rather than saying almost $3,000 in about a day. Google do the same with their keyword tool. Figures are ultra precise: 2,900, 33,100, 590, 170 and so on. Not 3,000-ish, 33,000 or so, 600 around about, 200 or whatever. They're designed to be believable, as though Google's computers have actually gone out and checked the exact number of searches that were made recently, which they haven't. Definitely isn't the case. The keyword plan is aimed at advertisers, and it wants to convince them to spend more money on more adverts. So it wants to steer them towards ones that are reasonably competitive, ones where they'll get more clicks and therefore Google get more money. And if it gave woolly figures, potential advertisers wouldn't be as convinced to spend money. But that means we probably can't trust any figures that are put out there. As an aside, that goes for a lot of things. How many people were in a crowd, for instance, that's based on the average square footage, basically, that a person takes up on the ground, including personal space, and then it's extrapolated out to the area the crowd covered, allowing for the fact that the crowd tapers off as it goes further out. So that's why crowd figures are often, there were 500,000 people there, or no, there's 250,000 or 1 million. Same goes for government figures. The UK is currently deciding whether or not to stay in the European Union, and there's a big gap in the figures about how much it costs us to be a member of the EU. Depending on which side of the argument, anything from 5 billion a year to 8.6 billion, so half as much again, more than half as much again, nearly double. Quite a big difference, so it's hard to know which figure, if either, is true. But anyway, back to internet marketing. Most of the truths out there are hiding in plain sight. What ranks at the top of the search engine queries, for instance? You can do that. Just do a search for yourself. Check a few of the pages. Chances are they've got a lot of relevant content. Probably isn't clean code if you look at the view source side of things, because modern websites, unless they're an ancient design like, say, Craigslist, tend to have a lot of code behind the scenes so that they display well on different devices and keep track of your preferences and do all sorts of other nice things that we expect. But the sites probably load reasonably fast most of the time. That's one of Google's claimed factors, and that seems to be the case. And they may be mobile friendly if you're viewing them on your phone. That's again a factor that Google claim is happening, and yeah, sort of, but it's about 2 years after they first claimed it, so it could just be the market catching up with what they think they want. Sites have probably got decent on-page SEO, search engine optimization, things like title tags, headlines, alternative text for images, fairly high word count, that kind of thing. And you can check that for yourself and prove whether or not Google are telling you the truth when they say they're getting rid of spam results. Check Viagra, and yeah, it's a bit cleaner than it ever used to be, but it's still pretty spammy once you get past the first half dozen Wikipedia-style results. But what about other things that people claim are true? The answer tends to be it depends. If you've followed a person for some time and checked out some of the things they've said, there's a decent chance their latest words are true. But even then, not always. I was listening to a recording the other day, and it was pretty much do as I say, not as I do, because it was in direct contradiction to what I'm on their mailing list. It's direct contradiction to what they're actually doing. But in reality, you need to test things for yourself. Then you'll find out whether or not they're true for you, because we're all different. A bit like following a recipe. You could give the same cake recipe to a dozen different people, and chances are you'd end up with a dozen slightly different cakes or dishes at the end of it. It's just the way of, someone leaves it in for another minute, or a phone goes off, or they don't precisely measure the ingredients, or one's a bit older or whatever. So they're all going to be different. Same goes for internet marketing, partly because you can't actually recreate the same conditions. Let's say someone's promoting a way to use Twitter to increase website traffic, and those come out quite regularly. And there's a lot of variables, even if you mimic their approach as close as you can. How many followers have both of you got? Are they real followers, or are they fake ones that they've been bought on Fiverr maybe? What time of the day were the tweets? Right the way down to the minute. What hashtags were used? What keywords were used? How much space was left in the tweet for people to be able to retweet? What else was happening at the exact same time in the world? If it's partway through the Super Bowl rather than just an ordinary match, you're going to get different results, and so on. You can't exactly replicate what happened before, so even if the idea was totally true, that doesn't mean it'll work in the exact same way for you, so you need to test. That's the only way you can really find out what's true and what isn't in internet marketing. And even then you can't be totally sure if it's not the online equivalent of a placebo, because placebos work. Have a look at some of the test results on those and you'll find that they get the same symptoms as the real pills. Weird. But most of us don't have the budget to run a test on, say, 1 million websites or keywords, so the phrase "your mileage may vary" comes into play, and it's a bit like the butterfly effect, where that butterfly flaps its wings and causes a hurricane the other side of the world. Most of the time, if your initial instinct, though, is that you don't believe it, you're probably right, and over time you'll be better able to spot the obvious fakes, so long as you don't subconsciously want to believe them, because again, we often buy stuff that we believe just because we feel like it, and you therefore buy into the idea even though you know deep down it's a non-starter. But anyway, if you'd like more help with internet marketing that works in the real world, and it'll be mainly boring stuff, and I put boring in quote marks, that you've probably dismissed as too basic rather than some shiny stuff that you'd love to think works but actually doesn't, click the link below this video to find out more, and I promise you that you'll have a fun time, and I reckon it will help you separate the truth from the fiction in your internet marketing. So click the link and join me on that. Thanks for watching.